Welcome to the Book the Business podcast, where we explore how experts, entrepreneurs, and business leaders turn what they know into a book and use that book to create authority, opportunities, and impact. My guest today is Andy Fieldhouse. Andy is a team relationship coach on a mission to help people get teamwork right. With more than 30 years of experience working in and with teams across the UK and the Middle East, and 16 years specializing in team development, he helps organizations build more cohesive, connected cultures rooted in purpose, trust, and strong relationships. His work helps companies reduce the costly effects of poor communication, conflict, low engagement, and high staff turnover. Andy is an ORSC certified ICF coach, and his first book with Rethink Press, Getting Teamwork Right, became an Amazon #1 bestseller in 2020. Andy, welcome to Book the Business.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you for your kind introduction.
Now, I'm really curious. I'd love to start by what led you to want to write the book. So let's find out a bit more about why you wrote the book and who you work with and who you were writing that book for.
Yeah, so I'm a natural writer. I've always enjoyed it. I did a history degree, did sort of history at school, so writing essays and things. I always enjoyed that. And then, I had a business career in London. I came out to the UAE 18 years ago, started working with teams, and I had the idea of setting up a business. And at that time, this was in 2019, I just thought, well, what do I need to do to, make the business work? And one of the ideas I had was, why don't I finally write the book that's always been in my head? All the time I've spent working with teams, I'm very passionate and interested. I'm a complete team nerd. I read articles, read books, and doing the work myself as well. I just thought, as part of the business launch, write a book, do my coaching certification, buy the computer, etc. But and just get out of my head. How do you do it if you want to build a great team? How do you get teamwork right? What do you need to think about? And I thought, yeah, get it down on paper, get it published. It'll help with my credibility, authority, etc. As part of building my profile. So that's really why I thought the book would be a good idea.
Fantastic. And so tell me a bit more about your business and who you work with, how you help them.
Yeah, so I help teams to build the right kind of relationships and culture and environment so that they can succeed at doing what they do. And the way that I do that, I do it in a number of different ways. We do some experiential team building. We help leaders with their development. But really, the powerful work is a coaching based approach to working with a team relationship system. So it's not coaching the individuals within the team; it's the unit of the team itself. And so what we do is we first of all assess where are they, what are they trying to achieve. We can only work if they want to develop and change in some way, either fix broken things or achieve new heights or manage change that they're going through. And then we kind of get in the room and hold the space, create the container, the team space, for them to be able to have the conversations with my help around the realities of their existence, so that they can identify what they need to get right. Because 70% of a team's performance capability relates directly to the culture climate on the team. If it's not right, people are not going to choose to do the work that you want them to do. And if you create that kind of right culture, meaning this is just how we do things around here, this is how we act on this team, and clarity and confidence in that, aligned with purpose and strong relationships and engaged people, means that the score takes care of itself. And so that's really the purpose behind what we do and how we help teams.
Brilliant. And I was lucky enough. We spent some time in Dubai at the beginning of the year together to hear this firsthand, like how you work with your clients. Give me an idea. What I was surprised by, this isn't just a small team thing. You're really joining all those dots together. It's the interconnection of that, the culture and the purpose. Give me an idea of the kind of size of organization that's going to get the biggest uplift, like the kind of clients you work with typically and where they get the uplift. And possibly some of the mistakes you see that they're making that you solve.
Well, how long have you got? I mean, we work with it with it's a micro and a macro kind of level. Each individual team has its own microclimate, and therefore need help. And then you just go from team to team within the organization. And there is it's not a phenomenon, but a thing that happens is you get these small islands of coherence in a sea of chaos, and they become kind of superconductors of strength and an example to the rest of the teams. So by working on these nodal points, team by team, you can actually have a ripple effect around an organization. And also, I like to try and work as high up the organization as I can, because that stat as 70% of the team's culture, 70% of what the team culture looks like comes from the leader. So the leader has to be part of the process. I cannot work with a team where the leader says, "My team is broken, go and fix them and tell me when they're better." No, you have to be part of it. And equally, we've got to get the buy-in and the leadership improvement. There's no little point working lower down if it's just not going to, change higher up. But we work with all sorts of different organizations and teams. Smaller local ones tends to be kind of larger businesses generally. There are some businesses that I've worked with. Like there's a company here. It was one of the oldest companies in the UAE called Dulsco. I've worked with multinational brands like Cartier. I've worked with one of the biggest companies you've never heard of called EssilorLuxottica. They manufacture lenses and spectacles, frames. They have 200,000 employees around the world. So a real mix of different teams. But effectively, I'm not a sector specialist because I'm not talking about the work you do. I'm a specialist in the culture and the relationships that you have, which is applicable to absolutely any team in any company in any part of the world.
Beautiful. And I would say, so just if we talk about your book again for a little moment, getting teamwork right, was it a principle level thing? So people are a bit more educated. They don't think, oh, it's just solving my team. Like you wanted to get that education piece into the people you're working with potentially before they even work with you. I mean, how do you deploy the book? Is it usually a before the conversation starts, or do you also deliver it as part of your coaching and work with organizations?
It's not part of the coaching work. It is almost a manifesto, I guess, of how do you do it? What do you need to think about? So I didn't write it. Book two, which I'm planning, is more, part of a journey program of, how to do it in terms of build the team. But this was just a case of, to be honest, what I sat down and I just thought, how would I do it? If I could go back to when I started out in business, what did I miss? What should I have thought about? And I thought about my kids who are now 10 and 11. It's a guidebook for them. It's a breadcrumb. I hope they read it before if they get into corporate life or whatever team they become part of, that they read it. And I wrote it really as a kind of, without a plan. I didn't sit down and go, right, I'm going to framework it and chapter this and that. I just started at the beginning and I just went, right, what's the first thing? Well, the team has to have a purpose for being in existence in the first place. Why does it exist? And you should think about that. You should be conscious and intentional about the messaging of purpose, meaning, and impact, and why that's important for people. So that's chapter one. Then you've got to think about who do you have on the team. You've got to think about that. So, the ideal team player concept. Okay, great. And then you've got to think about the atmosphere that you create, and you've got to think about how you set goals and measure, and you've got to think about leadership. So it just kind of rolled out of my head like that onto paper. It was just all here, and I kind of brain dumped it. And initially, I was talking to an editor in Australia when I was writing the manuscript before I talked to you guys, and she said, when people get into this flow state as authors, just get it out. Don't go back. Just dump it down on paper. And she said, "You're a very good writer. Luckily, it's a natural talent I have." And says, it doesn't need a lot of editing. It's just coming out. It's coming out. And I was writing several thousand words a day, and just boom, out it would come. And so I think it was 70,000 words initially, and I had to edit that down to about 40 odd thousand. But it just kind of came out, and then it existed, and it became the book, and then the application of that became a diff. Like I say, it wasn't sort of planned and this is what will happen in year one, year two. It was just get the damn thing out of your head onto paper, and then you've got a book, and then work out what to do with it.
I love that. And so you've explained a little bit about where you were at when you began this journey, like getting certification with the coaching and things that you're doing, but you already experienced of working with and in teams before you wrote the book. So what were things like before the book for your business? And then we're going to ask, what's changed since being a published author? It's been 6 years now, I think, since your book came out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I wrote basically, I started writing the manuscript in about 2017, 18. I had a redundancy payout. I had some time, I had some money. So, okay, boom, here's the opportunity. So it kind of came out, and then it sort of sat there, and I went back to work for somebody, and was busy, and then I eventually in 2019 was like, right, it's now serious time to take the plunge, set up my own coaching practice, my own coaching business, working with teams. So as part of that was like, oh, I've got the manuscript. Like, why don't I get that across the line and get that finished? So the business wasn't really in existence. December 2019, got the trade license. Here we go. COVID came along, killed it, basically. The irony that I set up a business entirely based upon people being in a room together in the only year in human history when the entire world said, no, you can't do that. So I had to, luckily my wife was employed and kept us financially afloat. And that year, 2020, was okay. Let's just get the book across the line, and let's just start networking. I was doing calls with networking groups and just LinkedIn prospecting, and just building and building and building, with the intention that when this goes away, maybe things will start to move. And I guess I did just enough, and I just started getting a little bit of work. And end of 2020, we were very fortunate. We had a short, sharp, strict lock-in for a couple of months, and then actually we moved forward quite quickly here in the UAE in terms of COVID. But then, I had the book, and the book coincided with kind of really getting my first clients, and it absolutely was instrumental in helping me with that process.
Brilliant. And how did you use the book specifically in that process? Was it just a fact that you had a book and you were an author that helped position you, or were you very purposeful in deploying the book?
Yeah, a bit of both. Yeah, absolutely. One of the main intentions behind the book was, firstly, profile, credibility, authority, especially in this market, in this culture, in the Middle East. Status is really important. And oh, wow, look at you, he's an author. That brings a lot of cachet. And so that was the kind of the idea. The specifics, some of the specific things that I did. We did a launch. We got it onto Amazon. We got that number one again. Status, fantastic. So there was a lot of activity around that. And only what I was capable of doing. I didn't have a budget to invest in a PR campaign myself. I didn't do that. But I did things like, there's the Emirates Literature Festival here every February, and I contacted them and I said, I'm a locally based author. I've written this book. If you're interested, and it's a big festival, but they're equally always looking for content and stories. And they said, send us the book, and they read it. They didn't say yes straight away, and they said, yeah, this looks good. So I became a featured author at the Emirates Literature Festival, which was brilliant. That opened the door to being on TV. That's part of the festival. There's TV programs, so I was interviewed on TV, and then you start to get content. I got the clip, I got the interview from the telly, I got photos from the literature festival, I was in the brochure. You start to get more credibility, but also more visibility, more content. I actually did a little workshop at the festival as well. They wanted me to do a workshop, so I did that. I was going to go and do a talk in a prison, and they were gonna pick me up in a Lamborghini police car and take me to the prison to do a talk to prisoners about what you should do when you get out of prison. Sadly, because of COVID, it didn't quite get across the line, but that would have been amazing. So
That's
so that
cool.
was a good thing that I did. I've done a number of keynote s speeches, talks. As an author, it absolutely gets you on more stages. I've been to Egypt, 180 people on a stage in Egypt, with a pharmaceutical company called Lundbeck. Papa John's Pizza, their regional annual conference, 300 people, keynote on stage with that. Because I'm an author, that's absolutely, and that's paid work. They bought 300 copies of the book for all of the people in the room, and I've done several engagements like that I would not have happened without the book.
Lovely.
And then I have a stack of books in my room, and every client meeting or prospects meeting I go to, or networking, I take a book. I hand it over, and it's partly that, again, it's that credibility, authority, but it's also a generosity thing and that's a reciprocity, mechanism. Oh, wow,
Yeah.
he's given me a book. I kind of owe him something.
Yeah.
So it is tactical, but it's just being it's being a nice guy and being a good
Yeah.
person, and book signing, and then you get the photo. Here I am, meeting this guy, and he loves, and you can always ask if you feel comfortable enough. You can say, "Would you post it on your LinkedIn or post it, on your kind of whatever?" And I've been on a number of different podcasts, and I clients buy the book for their staff, and I absolutely, well, it's harder to measure, but I am absolutely convinced that it has opened doors that would never have opened without it, and that have contributed to my success of being able to keep running a business for 5-6 years it's not easy, right? A lot of little businesses fail by year two. So
Yeah.
it's been an absolutely vital part of my kind of marketing and sales for doing what I do.
Brilliant. I just want to pick up on some of the things that you've shared here, which are really fantastic principles. So, although you had a book, you still put yourself forward with the book. So, you use that book as almost a key to open some of those doors. It's like the book is the thing that may help me to open that door. So, very much about being proactive. But what I really love, and I'm sad it didn't come off because it would be such a great story. But we often talk about books opening doors, as you say, like a book will open doors. You nearly opened a really difficult door to open, a prison, and I just think that is an amazing thing, like, we talk about difficult doors to open.
And then you also, it's part of your persona, right? So depending, this is what I did it for, and it supports my business, and so it's on my LinkedIn banner, it's on my profile document, it's when I email someone with links to my website, here's the books, you can buy it on Amazon, and like I say, I have a stack of copies here, and um, it's a really crucial part of the persona.
I love that. Another thing that I often say to people is a book can grant you instant authority that even years of experience can't. It's kind of a marker. It's one of those signals that says exactly as you said, like with the status, it's a signal of authority and that you took the time to put down your best thinking in a form that people can scrutinize and share and it's public. And so when I think about that, this idea of instant authority. What's fascinating about your story, you kind of became an authority overnight in a new business. So you obviously you'd be this is years of experience and understanding behind this, but you kind of built the business with the book as one of those key assets. I think that's quite unique. Often we work with people maybe 3 or 4 years in to their business and then they go, now I'm going to write the book. So tell me more about that. It sounds like you already shared that was a strategy from the beginning. But does that mean everything kind of orbits around your identity as an author and the book as the kind of the thing that holds it all together? I'd love to know more.
Yeah, so as a coach, the coaching world is a little bit. I mean, it is governed. It's licensed, but it's not legally licensed, right? You don't. It's not like a therapist or psychologist. Anyone could be a coach, and it's a growing discipline. Team coaching, especially, is fast growing. When I started 6-7 years ago, well, nearly 9 years ago, I first did my training. No one had heard of it, right? And so, I mean, and in another 2 or 3 years, everyone's going to probably have heard of it. But um, it was important to me, whether you're a consultant or a coach, or is people buy me, right? And they have to pass through several gates of building trust and confidence before they'll write the check. And so I know that I'm a commercially minded person. I've been a salesperson, and I knew when I set up the business that I have to put myself above others, as an option for people to pay. And so that credibility and authority piece was really, really important. How do I stand out from the crowd? How do I not just be another person who's done a weekend course and calls themselves a coach? No, I need to be certified by an internationally recognized body, because I get briefs. We only take certified coaches,
Yeah.
ICF or European Coaching Association or AC certified, and that's a big commitment. That's like almost like an MA level of work, and you have
Yes.
to do supervision. You have to log 100 hours of coaching. It's not just do the weekend course and And it's that level of effort that was also like the book. It's not just I've done a PDF. Wow, you've actually published a book. You can buy it in a bookshop. It got onto the shelves in the bookshops here in the UAE. And I've got some great photos of my daughter pointing at it on the bookshelf. Like, oh, Daddy's book. Um, that's the substance. That's that's the cachet. That's the important thing that stands you out, from the crowd. And so that was really part of the strategy for the business, was establishing me, because I'm selling me. Now, the other thing about the book is for any business that is selling a service, selling you, people need on average 12 touch points before they will buy from you.
Yeah.
Now, you might have to do the legwork, and again, you if doing this kind of business, the more efficient you are with your time, and the more that people can have those 12 touch points without you having to do it, the better. As an
Yeah.
example, I had a guy contact me, and I didn't know him, and he said, "I've been given your number. Can we have a chat?" Yep, let's do a call. So I got on the call, and sometimes it takes months for me to get to a point. I've been working with a guy for a year now, trying to get him to commit to doing his team, and you can't force it. The team's got to be ready, which is fine, but the sales cycle can be extremely long. And but he's going to commit to some decent bit of work. However, this other guy called me up, said, "Yeah, let's have a call." And then he volunteered the information of, I've read your book. I've seen your book. I heard about you from this guy. I've seen your LinkedIn. I saw your video." And he just reeled off like several touch points and I think you can weight the touch points. Like, I've read the book, he's like 5 touch points. If he's gone that far, then he's passed through several gates. And so the book acts in the sales cycle as well. It's not just a credibility authority. People read it and then they want to get in touch, or they hear about it, or whatever. So, and that's part of your content strategy. Make sure you're visible, you're networking, you're posting on LinkedIn, you're getting as many opportunities as you can to be seen as a thought leader, panel discussions, conferences, speeches, articles. It's not difficult to get published in magazines. I've been in Forbes business, golf business. You get in touch and say, "I'm an author." "Oh, if you're an author, we'll give you an article."
Yeah. I
So
love
so
that.
there's
Yeah.
multiple ways that it works in terms of its kind of cachet and reach.
Yeah. What I really love is that you've actually applied this. So a lot of the time I use this as an example. I talk all the time about the benefits of being an author, but you only get those benefits if people know you're an author. If you're a best kept secret, you've written a book and don't tell anybody. And as you said earlier, you don't step into that identity as I'm an author, I'm an authority. The opportunities are not going to just land on your lap necessarily. You do need to make stuff happen. So if we move from that, you've explained so many things. It's going to be so valuable to people watching or listening to this episode. Um, what have been some of the pinch me moments on your journey? If we haven't already covered them, like, are there any magic moments where you're like, that was amazing, and I'm really glad I'm doing what I'm doing?
Yeah, I mean, the Literature Festival, such a privilege, being up there with internationally famous authors, obviously. But I think it's the moments that you get to deliver against your purpose of helping people belong in teams that succeed. I mean, it's so rewarding, and the book has opened those doors. And I'll give you an example of this keynote in Egypt, in Hurghada. 180 people from a pharmaceutical background, and I talk. The book picture was on the screen, and I talked about teamwork, and one of the things I did was the concept of what we call the third entity, which is to be able to see your relationship from outside the relationship. And there's an exercise where I ask people to identify a relationship they have with an individual where there's a mild degree of tension or a bit of conflict, or you're just curious as there's an impasse, and you walk through the 3 points of the triangle. The first point is your own shoes, your own opinion, and imagine the person is in front of you and you can talk to them and tell them how you're feeling, what you need. Then they have to go and stand in that person's shoes, a little bit challenging, but it's the empathy and the ability and the movement physically to step away from your geographical position and stand and look back at yourself, and then you speak their voice and you say, "I think this, I need that." And in that moment, I was on the stage with 180 people all facing the back of the room away from me, thinking, This is crazy. They're paying me to stand here in silence. And then the third position is stand in the position of the relationship, and imagine that you are the relationship looking at the two people within it. What do you see that they don't? What do you need from them? What request do you have of them? And what words of encouragement do you want to give? And so they all did this exercise. It's very powerful. Anyone can do it. I've just explained it. You can do it yourself anytime. And in the lunch break, this quite tough South African guy came up to me, in quietly, away from other people, and he said, "I have to thank you for that exercise." And he started to tear up, and he said, "As soon as I finished, I went outside in the coffee break, and I made a phone call I should have made 20 years ago." And I just was like, "That's why I do what I do." And that I wouldn't have had that opportunity if it wasn't for the book, and to be on that stage and just let them do that for themselves, and that's the power. And when times are tough and money is tight, and you've just got to hold on to moments like that and know that you are, I'm practice what I preach, and I'm nailed on to my purpose, and that's the delivery. That's what it's all about. That's why I do it.
I love that. I love that example. What it reinforces for me is that our authors are making an impact. Like we have one impact as a publisher and raising their profile, but you're going into the world, changing the world. And so a phrase at Advantage the Authority Company is elevating voices that move the world. And that's a great example through that one person just experiencing you that they may not have had it not been for your book and you going through the work of doing that. Who knows what ripple effect is going to come from that individual's
Yeah. Yeah,
transformation.
and that's
And
the one I got told about. Now, it's never gonna
yeah,
land with everybody. Sometimes some people find that a little bit weird, it's that exercise. But there must be so many other examples I just don't ever get to hear about. But I
yeah,
know they happen, and absolutely, I'm a big believer in kind of karma and the universe, and I'm putting positive vibes out there in a very difficult world, and at a very difficult time, and I've just got to keep believing that something's going to look after me and my family, and I'm doing the right thing here. And I describe often, I don't think I've got a job. I feel like I have a calling. There's something that has called me to do this work. My whole life experience leading up to this work happened for a reason, and it's given me the skills and the abilities, because of what I went through in my life, good and bad. And so I'm very passionate about that as a purpose, and I feel very, very lucky that I had the opportunity to publish the book, and it is a part of my legacy for my kids and maybe my grandkids and anyone else out there in the world. And if it just lands on one person's desk at one time and it just might make the difference, then that's what it's really for.
you've
That's what
just
it's really
reminded
for.
me, Andy, about your kids. I think it was it your son? You've got a young. It was
Yeah.
there was a brilliant photo when your book launched of your son going with the book, and
Yeah,
I
yeah, he
remember
was
that was
just
like
on
an
he was
iconic
probably
photo.
5 at the time, and he's just going like, "Ah," when he's got his shirt off, so it looks like he's naked, popping out of the top. He's like a jack in a box popping out of the top of the book.
Yeah, that
But
became
yeah,
like
but
an
that was
iconic
that
image.
that
I
was
was
that
so
thing you
pleased.
told me to do, like every author should do, is film your unboxing. When you get that first, it's such a moment. It's such a great achievement moment when that first box of books arrives. It's like in Back to the Future,
Yeah,
when his dad gets the books. It's a life moment. So always remember, one top tip for authors is film or photograph your first opening of your first book. It's a magical moment. You only get it once.
fantastic. Normally at this point, I'd ask for tips for authors, but genuinely, if you're listening to this or watching this, re-listen. Andy has given you so much value, so I'm not going to jump into that. What I'm going to ask now is, Andy, where can people find out more about you? Is it theteamspace.com? Is that the main central point of finding out all about your world? Is there anywhere else they should go for more advice or to get copies of your book?
Yeah, so go to theteamspace.com. Yeah, theteamspace.com. LinkedIn, if you search just Andy Fieldhouse, that's a rare surname. There are not many of us. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I do publish a fortnightly newsletter. You can find it from the website under resources. If you want to sign up for my newsletter, I talk all about teamwork stuff. So any of those, you can get involved in the conversation.
And selfishly, if you are responsible for a team, or you want to operate better within a team, get a copy of Andy's book, Getting Teamwork Right. Thank you so much, Andy. This has been brilliant, and I really appreciate your time and your generosity in sharing your journey. Thank you.
No, you guys have been very helpful to me, so I'm very happy to reciprocate, and I always love talking about the book.